We want to get straight to some breaking news that we are following out of England. Kensington Palace is giving an update on the health of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Catherine has been undergoing treatment for an undisclosed type of cancer since the beginning of the year. She made a public announcement via video of her diagnosis back in March.
Kate Middleton smiled at the cameras on Christmas Day 2023. Then she vanished. For 3 whole months, nobody saw her. The palace stayed quiet. The world started talking. There were whispers about her marriage, rumors about something far worse. A photo was released to calm people down, but it only made things worse. Major news agencies pulled it within hours. Something didn't add up. And when the truth finally came out in a quiet video on a bench, it broke hearts everywhere.
However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present. My medical team therefore advised that I should undergo a course of preventative chemotherapy, and I'm now in the early stages of that treatment.
But that was just the beginning. What came next shocked even the royal family. The crisis did not arrive with one dramatic moment. It came quietly, through 2 medical updates in January 2024 that at first seemed separate and manageable. On January 17th, Kensington Palace announced that Catherine, Princess of Wales, who was 42 at the time, had undergone planned abdominal surgery at the London clinic. The palace said the operation had been successful and that she would stay in the hospital for up to 2 weeks. It also said she was not expected to return to public duties until after Easter, which fell on March 31st. At that stage, the condition was believed to be non-cancerous. On that same day, Buckingham Palace shared another update. King Charles III, then 75, would soon have a corrective procedure for an enlarged prostate, a common and benign condition in older men. The king entered the same London clinic on January 26th and was discharged on January 29th. The palace chose to make his prostate treatment public, in the hope that other men would take their own health seriously and get checked. At the time, that decision seemed practical and modern. Soon, it would feel much bigger than that, because while doctors were treating the benign prostate issue, they noticed something else. Later, the palace described it in careful language, saying that a separate issue of concern had been found. That quiet sentence changed everything. On February 5th, Buckingham Palace made the announcement that shook the country. Tests carried out after the king's procedure had identified a form of cancer. The palace made one point clear: it was not prostate cancer. Beyond that, almost nothing was shared. There was no mention of the type, the stage, or the outlook. That careful silence would come to shape the public response to both illnesses. The statement said that the king had begun a schedule of regular treatments, and that doctors had advised him to step back from public-facing duties. Even so, he remained positive and hoped to return to full public duty as soon as possible. Behind closed doors, he continued his constitutional work. He still went through state papers and held his meetings with the Prime Minister, but in public, he was suddenly absent. For a monarch who had waited his whole life to begin his reign, and who had been on the throne for only 17 months, it was a hard blow. What followed made the situation even heavier. While the king's diagnosis was at least known, the Princess of Wales had simply disappeared from public life. Kensington Palace had already said she would not return until after Easter. But as February moved into March and she was not seen, a vacuum opened up. The internet rushed in and filled that silence with rumor after rumor. Kate's last public appearance had been on Christmas Day, December 25th, 2023, at Sandringham. After her surgery in January, she vanished completely. The palace had been clear from the beginning about the timeline, yet that did not stop the speculation. With every passing week, the theories grew stranger and harsher. People asked where she really was. They guessed at problems in her marriage. They imagined she was far more seriously ill than anyone was admitting. What started as gossip soon turned into a worldwide frenzy, pushed forward by hashtags, videos, and endless online debate. Kensington Palace tried to calm things down. On February 29th, it repeated that it had been very clear from the outset that the Princess of Wales would be out until after Easter, and that nothing had changed. The reminder did almost nothing. Around the same time, Prince William pulled out of a memorial service for his godfather, the late King Constantine of Greece, on February 27th, citing a personal matter. Later, that absence was understood in the context of the strain at home. By then, the lack of information had become a crisis on its own. Then came the attempt to settle the public mood, and instead, it made everything worse. On March 10th, which was Mothering Sunday in the United Kingdom, Kensington Palace released a smiling photo of Kate with her 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. The image was credited to Prince William. The message that came with it thanked the public for their kind wishes and continued support over the previous 2 months, signed simply with the letter C. The goal was obvious. The palace wanted people to see that the princess was recovering and doing well. For a few hours, that seemed possible. Then people began noticing small, odd details in the image, especially around Princess Charlotte's left hand and sleeve. Before long, major photo agencies took the extraordinary step of withdrawing the picture. The Associated Press said the image appeared to have been manipulated in a way that did not meet its standards. Reuters, AFP, and Getty followed. For international agencies to kill an official palace photo was almost unheard of, and the damage was immediate. Kensington Palace did not just look clumsy, it looked unreliable. One senior news executive even said publicly that once a source lets you down, the standard changes. The next day, on March 11th, Kate herself issued a personal apology, which was striking for a senior royal. She said that, like many amateur photographers, she sometimes experimented with editing. She apologized for the confusion caused by the family photo. Yet that explanation only deepened the suspicion. People began asking a new question. If the palace had altered a photo meant to reassure the public, what else had been shaped behind the scenes? A grainy video of William and Kate leaving a farm shop in Windsor, published on March 19th, became the first real sighting of her since the surgery. And even that was torn apart online by people determined to doubt what they were seeing. By that point, the speculation had reached its peak. It could only be stopped by the truth, and the truth was painful. On the evening of March 22nd, Kensington Palace released a video. This time there was no written statement, no palace spokesperson, and no distance. Kate sat alone on a bench and spoke directly to the camera. Calmly and clearly, she revealed that tests carried out after her January surgery had found cancer. The surgery had first been believed to address a non-cancerous condition.
It was thought that my condition was non-cancerous.
But later testing changed that understanding. She said she was in the early stages of preventative chemotherapy, treatment given after surgery to reduce the risk of the cancer returning. Like the king, she did not reveal the type of cancer. What made the message so powerful was not only the diagnosis itself, it was the way she spoke about her children. She explained how hard it had been to tell George, Charlotte, and Louis what was happening, and how much time it had taken to explain it in a way they could understand and to reassure them that she would be okay. In that moment, the noise of the previous months looked especially cruel. Behind all the rumors had been a mother of 3 young children trying to process a cancer diagnosis in private, while strangers on the internet picked apart her marriage, her body, and her absence. The public mood changed almost overnight. The ugliest theories faded. In their place came sympathy, regret, and a much clearer understanding of everything that had come before. Her disappearance now made sense. The privacy made sense. Even the badly handled photo looked different once people understood the pressure surrounding it. At the center of it all was one unavoidable reality. The monarch and the Princess of Wales were both undergoing cancer treatment at the same time, and the monarchy still had to function. That created a serious practical problem. Charles had long supported a slimmer monarchy with fewer full-time working royals. Under normal conditions, that already meant a small team. Now, two of the most important figures were largely out of action, including the wife of the future king. The wider family had already been reduced by Prince Harry and Meghan leaving for America in 2020 and by Prince Andrew's disgrace. Suddenly, the institution had to keep moving with even fewer people. So the burden shifted to a tight group around the center. Queen Camilla, then in her mid-70s, took on a much larger public role and became one of the most visible faces of the crown. She represented the king at events he could not attend and helped hold the public side of the monarchy together. Prince William carried an especially heavy load. He had to continue his own role and public work, including major solo appearances such as walking the BAFTA red carpet, alone in February 2024, while also supporting his recovering wife in private and protecting his children. During school holidays, he stepped back to be with his family, then returned to duties after Easter on April 18th. Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and the Duchess of Edinburgh also absorbed more engagements, doing what they have done for years with steady discipline and little fuss. The king, meanwhile, refused to fade from view. By April 2024, less than 3 months after his diagnosis, he had already resumed selected public-facing duties. One of the clearest signs came when he visited a cancer treatment center and began slowly rebuilding his schedule. Over the following year, he did something remarkable for a monarch in active cancer treatment. He hosted major state visits, welcomed the presidents of France, the United States, and Germany, and carried out overseas travel. The palace presented his work as something that supported him rather than drained him. In that telling, duty gave him structure, purpose, and strength, while treatment continued in the background. Kate's way back into public life began slowly, and what made it stand out was how open she was about the struggle. Nothing about her return felt rushed. Nothing felt staged in the old polished way either. It felt careful, personal, and real. When she made her first public appearance after her diagnosis on June 14, 2024, at Trooping the Colour, the image carried far more meaning than a normal royal event would have. She appeared on the Buckingham Palace balcony, and she rode in a carriage with her children. It was a calm and reassuring picture, chosen with clear purpose. The day before, she had shared a written update that struck a very different tone from the usual palace language. She admitted she was still in treatment. She said she was not out of the woods. She explained that she still had a few more months of chemotherapy ahead. What stayed with many people was the plain way she described it. She said she was making good progress, yet she also spoke honestly about the hard days. The days when you feel weak, when you feel tired, and when rest is the only thing your body will allow. That honesty changed the way people saw her return. It was not presented as a clean comeback or a triumphant return to normal life. It felt like someone letting the public see a difficult middle chapter while she was still living through it. Then, on September 9, 2024, she shared another deeply personal update, this time through a video filmed in the Norfolk countryside with William and their children. The setting mattered. The tone mattered too. It felt intimate and grounded, far removed from the stiff formal style that so often surrounds royal announcements. In that video, Kate confirmed that she had completed her course of chemotherapy. Even then, She was careful with her words. She spoke about staying cancer-free. She spoke about recovery. She spoke about finding a new normal. She did not describe the end of treatment as a finish line. She described it as a milestone, an important one, but still only part of a much longer road. That made the next stage of her journey feel more meaningful when it arrived. On January 14, 2025, during a visit to the Royal Marsden Hospital, where she had been treated, the Princess of Wales announced that she was in remission. It was the kind of update people had hoped for, yet even in that moment, the tone remained measured. In an Instagram message, she wrote that it was a relief to now be in remission, and that she remained focused on recovery. The language carried both gratitude and caution. She thanked the staff who had cared for her. She announced that she would become joint patron of the Royal Marsden alongside William. She also looked ahead with a kind of quiet hope, writing that it takes time to adjust to a new normal, while adding that she was looking forward to a fulfilling year ahead because there was much to look forward to. Even with that good news, remission did not close the story. In many ways, it opened a new and more reflective phase. Throughout 2025, Kate began speaking more freely about what comes after treatment, about the long shadow cancer can leave behind, and about the way recovery continues long after the hospital visits become less frequent. She talked not only about the physical side of healing, but also about the emotional side, the slower and less visible part that stays with a person and often reshapes daily life. Much of that feeling found its way into her Mother Nature video series, which she launched during 2025. The series was personal and thoughtful, and it gave a glimpse into how much comfort she had found outdoors while trying to recover. Nature was not presented as a slogan or a theme. It felt like a lifeline. That became especially clear on March 30th, 2025, when the United Kingdom marked Mother's Day. That date carried extra weight because the year before had been such a painful public disaster. In 2024, the doctored family photo released for Mother's Day had triggered days of confusion, ridicule, and suspicion. It had become part of the wider panic surrounding Kate's absence and had badly damaged trust. So when Mother's Day came around again in 2025, she chose a very different path. There was no posed family portrait. There was no attempt to recreate the kind of image that had caused so much trouble. Instead, she shared a tribute to nature, writing that over the past year, nature had been our sanctuary. It was subtle, but it was powerful. She reclaimed the moment without trying to erase what had happened before. She gave it a different meaning and moved it into calmer ground. While Kate's path through illness and recovery became more personal and increasingly visible, King Charles followed a different course through 2025. His public presence remained steadier, yet the year still brought moments of concern. In March 2025, his cancer treatment caused side effects serious enough for him to be briefly admitted to hospital. That news brought fresh worry, especially because the palace had shared so little about the specific nature of his illness. After the hospital stay, he withdrew to Highgrove, the country estate he loves deeply, in order to recover. Several planned engagements were cancelled, and for a moment there was a sense that the strain of treatment might be catching up with him in a more serious way. Even so, the pause proved short. Roughly 2 weeks later, he was back to work and taking part in a state visit to Italy with Queen Camilla. That trip sent its own message. It showed a king determined to keep going, determined to be seen, and determined not to let illness define the shape of his reign. During the visit, the royal couple even marked their wedding anniversary with the Italian president, which gave the whole trip an air of warmth as well as endurance. Charles kept most details of his condition private, and that remained true throughout the year. He spoke only rarely about his own health. Yet when he did speak, He used those moments to press a message he clearly believed in. He urged the public to take early detection seriously. He also praised what he called the community of care around every cancer patient, drawing attention to the specialists, the nurses, the researchers, and the volunteers whose work shapes every stage of treatment. Then came the most important update on Charles's health in nearly 2 years. In December 2025, as part of a Stand Up to Cancer campaign and in a personal video message recorded shortly beforehand, the king shared news that was genuinely encouraging. By then, he was 77, and he told the public that, thanks to early diagnosis, effective intervention, and following doctor's orders, his own schedule of cancer treatment could be reduced in the new year. It was the clearest sign yet that his condition was being managed successfully and that the most demanding phase of treatment was easing. Still, the palace took care to frame that news with precision. Doctors had decided to move the king into what was described as a precautionary phase of treatment in 2026 with a reduced schedule. That wording mattered. He was not described as being in remission. The message was hopeful, but it was not final. It suggested control, stability, and improvement, while also making clear that this remained an ongoing health matter rather than a closed chapter. For those watching the monarchy closely, there was another development running alongside the medical story. Several royal observers and biographers began to suggest that Charles had found a stronger sense of purpose in the throne during this period. One biographer said in early 2026 that he was arguably the happiest he had ever been in the role, energized by the work rather than diminished by it, even as treatment continued. By the first half of 2026, the mood surrounding the royal family looked very different from the panic and uncertainty of 2024. Kate, who turned 44 on January 9, 2026, had clearly begun to increase the pace of her public life. Commentators noted the shift almost immediately. The year before had carried the feeling of a cautious re-entry. This time, the tone was steadier. In January 2026, she joined William on a hospital visit that highlighted NHS staff, linking her public work more directly to the world of care that had shaped so much of her recent private experience. Around her birthday, she also released the final installment of her Mother Nature series. In doing so, she described it as a deeply personal and creative reflection on how nature had helped her heal. She also described it more broadly as a story about the power of nature and creativity in collective healing, which showed how much her message had grown from something intimate into something meant to speak to others going through hardship of their own. Another sign of change came when she stepped back onto the international stage. In 2026, she undertook what was widely reported as her first overseas visit since recovery. The trip included engagements in Italy, where she attended a school assembly and praised an educational philosophy that treats nature as a third teacher. That small phrase landed well because it fit so naturally with the way she had been speaking for months. For anyone following her journey closely, the symbolism was hard to miss. Here was the future queen abroad again, moving confidently through public duties after the hardest stretch of her life, and doing so with a voice that felt more personal and grounded than before. In early June 2026, another moment showed how much her role had changed. She visited the Christie Cancer Centre in Manchester, where she embraced a patient as the bell was rung to mark the end of treatment. The scene carried emotional weight because it connected her own experience with someone else's. She was no longer engaging with illness only as a royal figure offering support from a formal distance. She was meeting patients with the understanding of someone who had lived through the fear, the waiting, the uncertainty, and the hope that comes with reaching an important milestone. That kind of engagement has become one of the defining features of Kate's public life after illness. It feels less rehearsed and more rooted in experience. At the same time, The king continued to reign while living within that reduced, precautionary phase of treatment. He kept working, he kept traveling, he kept carrying out the visible duties of monarchy. He also continued to use his diagnosis to push the case for early screening, turning something deeply personal into a public message that could genuinely help others. In that sense, both Charles and Kate began to shape a new way of handling royal illness in public. They did not reveal everything, and the palace still held much back. Yet they opened more of the human side than previous generations ever would have considered. That is one reason this period matters beyond the illness itself. The health crisis that stretched from 2024 into 2026 changed the monarchy in ways that will likely last long after both recoveries are complete. One clear change came in the area of communication. The long silence around Kate's absence in early 2024, followed by the doctored Mother's Day photograph, showed how quickly trust can collapse in the age of social media. Once the gap opened, it did not stay empty for long. Rumor rushed in. Conspiracy rushed in. Amateur analysis, suspicion, and endless speculation filled every corner of the space the palace had left unaddressed. The old method of controlling the image through carefully managed releases no longer looked strong. It looked fragile. By contrast, Kate's direct video messages worked far better. They felt personal. They felt credible. They gave people something real to hold on to. Another lasting change came in the tone of the royal family itself. Both Charles and Kate chose to make their diagnoses public. That decision alone marked a break from older royal habits, when illness was often hidden behind formality and silence. Kate's willingness to speak about telling her children, about the emotional toll of treatment, and about the slow pace of recovery brought a new kind of honesty into royal life. Charles used his own diagnosis in a different way, but the effect was similar. He put his voice behind early detection and public awareness. Reports suggested that his earlier decision to speak publicly about his prostate procedure had already encouraged more men to seek checks. That means the openness had consequences beyond image. It may well have saved lives. The crisis also revealed a great deal about the structure of the modern monarchy. For years, the institution had been moving toward a slimmer working model, with fewer senior royals carrying more of the load. When both the King and the Princess of Wales were facing cancer at the same time, that structure was tested under real pressure. Much of the burden shifted onto Queen Camilla, Prince William, Princess Anne, and the Edinburghs. The strain exposed how narrow the active working roster had become. Yet it also showed that the machine could keep moving. State visits still happened. Constitutional duties were still carried out. Public engagements continued. The monarchy looked vulnerable, but it also showed a stubborn kind of resilience. Perhaps the deepest shift, though, came in the way the public now sees William and Kate. Their future roles as king and queen had always been discussed in terms of preparation, expectation, and image. This crisis made those ideas more immediate and more human. William was seen balancing official duty with the private reality of being a husband and father during an intensely difficult period. Kate was seen enduring a serious illness, while also facing a storm of public scrutiny that became harsh, invasive, and at times cruel. Through all of that, she kept a composure that seemed to deepen affection for her rather than simply preserve it. Their bond as a couple also came into sharper focus. They did not look like distant symbols during these years. They looked like a family under pressure, trying to hold themselves together while the whole world watched.